Hey everyone, it's Jen. I hope 2017 is treating you all well so far. Today I thought I would talk about what supplies I use to study for the MCAT because some of them can be a bit pricey and I know a lot of people are worried about buying products and study guides that will work well for them, so I thought I would share my experience with it. So I bought the 2015 Kaplan set. That's Kaplan with a K, and I'll include in the description below all the different names of things I got. That way if you're interested in buying them, you have the exact name and spelling. But so, like I said, I use Kaplan, and so they're a set of 7 books, 7 for each of the subjects, and just to refresh your memory, the subjects are general chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, math and statistics, biology, sociology, and psychology, and then there's a new reading section which is critical analysis and reasoning skills review. And so this is the one that's kind of new. It's a lot of different reading passages and answering questions just to make sure that you can make inferences, and all of the passages are non-science related. So I use the Kaplan books. These have a lot of resources within the books, which is really helpful, and lots of ways to kind of assess how you're feeling. So each book is divided into 10 chapters, and on the side of each page there will be key concepts or definitions, equations to know to kind of point out important things to recognize. There might also be what they call bridges, which will connect it to a different subject. For example, you might be reading something in the biochemistry section that is similar to a chapter in the math section, so it points that out to you to help you make connections across the different subjects. So each chapter is broken down into smaller sections, much like a textbook, and at the end of each section there's a little review with a few questions that you can answer and then check the key in the back to make sure you're fully understanding. So this is a concept check, so you fill it in here and then you can check the back, and this is just an easy way to assess if you're retaining this information, and it keeps you kind of on track. Otherwise, sometimes when you're just reading 50 pages at once, you can kind of start to zone out, and this helps prevent that. So at the end of each chapter, there is a concept summary. It has bullet points of all the big key ideas that you should take away, which is really nice. They lay that out for you. And so it'll be a few pages, depending how much information. They'll have the answer to the concept checks going through. That way you can make sure you're getting it right. And then there will be the equations you need to know, key terms. So again, just making sure that you know what's important. And then there will be practice questions, and these questions are designed to be similar to the kinds of questions you'll see on the MCAT. And what's great is you get 15 for each one. They're multiple choice, so you can work through them. Read the chapter first, work through them, see what you're understanding, and then check the answers. And what I love is that they don't just give you the right answer, they give you fairly in-depth explanations for why that is the right answer, because sometimes you're really convinced that you know why you're right, and then you're not right. So this does a really great job of explaining the thought process, how you should approach the problem, instead of just saying, well, the answer's A. That's it. It says the answer is A, and this is how you'll get to that answer. So I think Kaplan does a really good job within the books themselves of providing multiple opportunities to make connections, find the key ideas you need to know, and to assess how well you're understanding. Additionally, with the Kaplan books, if you buy a new book, you'll get an access code to an online site which will have even more quizzes, videos on difficult concepts. I discovered this later into my studying and wish I'd known from the beginning because it's such a great resource. Some people do better watching a video of people explaining difficult concepts rather than just reading it from a textbook. So it provides 2 different ways to retain this information, both reading it and hearing it. The different questions are again set up to be very similar to the MCAT questions so that you get practice not only with the material but with the testing style. In addition to buying this 7-book set, you'll get 1 practice MCAT test. And so they recommend that you take it like you would take the real MCAT, that you sit down, you're alone, you have no distractions, and that you give yourself the whole 7.5-hour time period. You take the breaks so that you get kind of the idea of what the real day would be like. I did this, and I also highly recommend it. It gave me a better idea of which sections I needed to get faster at, how much time I would have, and it just made me feel more prepared overall. So it comes with one, and you sit down, you can take it, and then it will give you a diagnostic of everything. It'll tell you what questions you got wrong, what was your overall score, and then it'll look at not just subjects you got wrong, but question types. And this will really give you a good idea of what your weaknesses are so that you can move forward. And so this is why I really liked using the Kaplan system, because between their books, their online resources, and their practice tests, I felt like they gave me a really good sense of where I was at and a lot of great ways to help me improve the areas that I was less confident about. For those of you who have already taken organic chemistry, you probably already have one of these, but I highly recommend using an organic molecule kit. I use Molymod, and so you can make these cute little organic molecules which can help you visualize when you're talking about stereoisomers, enantiomers, diastereomers, and you can kind of rotate them around and get a better visual, because I'm more of a visual learner, so this really helped me when I was reviewing specifically biochemistry and organic chemistry. You won't be able to use them in the actual MCAT, but when studying, they can be a really great resource. But if you're doing practice tests or questions, you might not want to use them in that instance, because then you might overly rely on them. One thing I tried to avoid using while studying was a calculator, just because you do not get to use one on the MCAT, and so you don't want to rely too heavily on them. You want to, brush up on your basic math to make sure you're fast, because you don't want to be wasting time on the actual test trying to figure out a simple calculation when you want to be focusing on the harder aspects. So I highly recommend not using the calculator too often when studying. So one thing that I've done since the beginning of my college experience was I actually save all my notes, and I put them in these really ginormous manila folders. I label them by subject, so I have genetics, I have physics, I've got some general chemistry, some organic chemistry, all the fun stuff. And so one, I do this because I hate to throw anything away, but also that way I can look back on them. A lot of things build upon themselves. So when taking biochemistry, we reference organic a lot, and that was really helpful to study. But specifically with the MCAT, using Kaplan books or online resources can be great, but sometimes reading how you explain something to yourself a year or 2 years ago is even more helpful. And so what I do specifically with my classes is I make these really obnoxious and brightly colored study guides, and I'll show you what I mean. So I use cardstock paper, and I started doing this really just to make my notes more colorful so that studying didn't feel so bad, but I've really gotten into it lately. So I do the different colors. I use fine tip Sharpies. So this one is a chart showing all the different functional groups in organic chemistry. And what I try to do is do one cardstock front and back per chapter. And what this does is it forces me to focus on the most important information. And I did this with the MCAT. So I took all of my Kaplan books, and for every single chapter in each book, I did one cardstock paper front and back study guide, so that I knew what was the most important information. You can't think everything is the most important and put every single detail in. You need to focus on what are the key concepts, what are the things that you don't understand, what are the diagrams that you think are important, and the equations that you need to memorize. And so doing these kinds of study guides where you can't afford to fit in everything, so this is looking at electrophilic attacks in organic chemistry, it forces me to kind of say which reactions are the most important for me to understand, and I can only do a front and back at most. This one I didn't actually use everything. And again, this is not all the information you need to know, but this synthesizes it. And just the practice of making these study guides is a great way to study. And I highly recommend using multiple colors, color coding, showing different diagrams, the different tables, the different mechanisms if you're talking about chemistry, because that will just help you even more. When I was doing the biology sections, for example, for circulatory system, I drew out the heart and all the different pathways using this system, and it really helped me. And it helps make it more pretty, which helps me stay more focused. Using the different colors grabs my attention so that I don't zone out. These study guides are also really helpful when you only have a quick hour and you can't read a full book. You can just bring some of these study guides, throw them in your bag, and you can quickly review them when you have time in between classes, or if you have an appointment or a meeting and you have 10 minutes. Glancing through these is sometimes easier than pulling out one of your big textbooks or your big MCAT review books. So they're just a little bit more easy to carry around. They're quicker, And again, they're only supplementary material. They don't have all the information, but they can be really helpful. Another resource that I used was Quizlet, which is an online flashcard website, which is really helpful because it keeps track of ones you missed. It makes tests for you. It's a really great way to learn, and that way you don't waste 200-something index cards if you want to save a little paper. It's a great way to learn things. So what I did was I put all the words in the glossary sections of my Kaplan books into Quizlet. I divided them by section, so at night, if I had 10 minutes, or even on your phone, there's an app, I could review the different psychology vocab words. I also made ones for important physics equations and for all the different amino acids from biochemistry and biology. It's all about timing. You don't want to be wasting a couple minutes on test day trying to remember what that one amino acid side chain looked like when you have a bunch of other questions you want to get to. So flashcards are a great way to ensure that you know them quickly, and that you can see one and know what it looks like. So I hope this has been helpful. I know that studying and preparing for the MCAT can be really stressful, but I really feel that these resources can help you feel more prepared, more confident, and feeling great when test day comes. I wish you all the luck, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!